There are many elements to consider here. How long will it take to train? How long will it take to deliver? For you, what's the most significant from this news?
It's the most significant weapons announcement, James, I think, since the tanks were promised in February. Arguably more significant because whilst it doesn't represent a step change in capability, what it does do is it extends that assistance into the air domain directly. So it's very significant, and I think we should see it that way. And it's also interesting that the means by which this was leveraged to the United States was very similar. In other words, the British and one or two other powers in Europe got together in February and donated modern NATO tanks. And much the same happened in the form of training promises and Prime Minister Sunak's mention of a coalition for jets, which also pressured the US this time as well. Although I suspect it wasn't quite one following the other. I suspect there was a bit more cooperation in it than we're led to believe.
Of course, we've been hearing for months and months flat-out no's from many partners on delivering these jets. Biden's U-turn, is it going to be too late for the spring counteroffensive that we hear so much about?
Oh, completely. These jets will not be deployed in any numbers. We may see some cosmetic deployment before the end of the year, but I suspect it'll be spring next year before we see them operating to their potential. And we may see them flying around, but that isn't operating to their potential. These jets, just as any component of air power, are part of a much more complex picture. They need to be trained, exercised, maintained, based to form part of that system. And putting that system together from not quite from scratch, but there's a lot to do, will take many, many months, not least the training of the aircrew, ground crew, and preparation of the bases, and a lot more besides, James.
Well, it has been touted and as a game changer, and you indeed seem to be in agreement with this. Moscow is also taking this very seriously. What will realistically change here?
Well, nothing much. They made the same saber-rattling threats for the HIMARS, the long-range artillery system, indeed much earlier in the war, calling all that escalation. This against the background, of course, constant bombardment day after day by high-end cruise missiles, most of which, of course, are shot down, by the gift of anti-aircraft missiles, by tanks, and now we hear it over jets. I don't think we've much to worry about just yet.
One question is, which of Ukraine's allies are likely to deliver on these jets? How many are they going to need for this to actually make the difference?
They'll probably need in excess of 30 to make any sort of impact. I think we won't know yet who the donor countries are. All countries require the jets that the countries that operated right now are required by those countries. There are constraints as to the types that are sent. There are constraints also on the avionics that are inside the jets that may need to be modified to be sent to Ukraine. So we won't know that, I think, just yet. But the coalition, which certainly exists of F-16 donating nations, will be thinking about that very carefully right now. But I would suggest it will probably be a couple of European countries.
All right, Dr. Frank.